Hey, everybody. Welcome to the GMI Rocket Show. Today's episode number 58. I'm your host, Roman Zelichenko. I am a former immigration lawyer turned entrepreneur and the founder of two companies, Laborless, which automates H-1B visa compliance, and also GMI Rocket, which is a digital marketing agency focused on immigration and mobility, and which, of course, brings you this show. I'm very excited today to have our guest, Faith McClure, who actually was supposed to be a guest several weeks ago, and I had this crazy hiccup with my computer. I had to cancel everything last minute and run around New York City trying to fix my laptop. It was a mess. So I'm really happy and grateful that Faith was willing to be flexible in her schedule. I'm really happy to have her back or have her on the show. So Faith is the founder of Enmigri, and Enmigri is basically a kind of practice management client portal platform for right now that's focused on immigration lawyers in Latin America, which is really interesting, right? Because obviously, huge region of the world. I'm based in the U.S. There's a lot of immigration between the U.S. and Latin America, but obviously, as you may have seen from prior guests on the show, there's a big concentration of immigration tech platforms and systems built for U.S. immigration lawyers. Not that much yet, but growing, concentrated on other parts of the world. So I'm super excited to learn about how Faith came, to this idea to help immigration attorneys based in Latin America, what Enmigri does, sort of where the company is going, and learn more about Faith's journey. So Faith, thank you so much for being here and for joining me, and again, for being flexible. Thankfully today the computers are working and everything's fine. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So before we get started, just for folks who are watching or listening live, shout yourself out in the comments. Let us know who you are, where you're calling from, maybe where you work. And then, of course, throughout the conversation, if you have any questions or comments, please shout them out. You know that I love to make this interactive. It's fun. I have my own questions, and Faith and I will have a discussion, but it's also great because we're doing this live to discuss what folks want to hear. So of course, engage with us there. And then, as the conversation goes, give us a like, a heart, show some love. So Faith, you're right now. So last time we spoke, when you were going to come on the show, you were in Denver, in Colorado. Well, yeah. And then now you are in
Ecuador. Cuenca, Ecuador.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you are, you're building a platform that's really focusing on the Latin American market. You're in Latin America physically. You've traveled all around. You've had an incredible journey as a career and technology lawyer. Not really related to immigration, but then of course you became someone who was the beneficiary of visas moving around the world. And it's one of those things where, regardless of how you come to it, very often it's like, oh, you experienced it and you think, this could be maybe better. So before we jump into like your world travels, can you share a little bit about, who's Faith before being an attorney? Where are you from? Kind of what's your early story?
Sure. I grew up in Massachusetts in a small town, and I was fortunate to have wonderful educational opportunities. The town where I grew up in, there was a large college prep school, a boarding school. And so there was a wonderful program that allowed some of the local students to apply and, if admitted, go on scholarship. So I did that. Then from there, I was able to go to Tufts University. I majored in economics and eventually law school at Syracuse after a little bit of a gap. But so that educational opportunity, coming from a background where I didn't have that much opportunity. It wasn't a situation where everyone in my family had gone to college and that kind of thing. So that really changed the course of my my career and my life journey. So I'm very thankful for that.
When you were a kid, did you ever think about kind of starting a business? Were you kind of one of those lemonade stand, selling, making things for students or your fellow classmates and selling it? Or were you really focused on education, obviously, for purposes of like eventually going to college and all that?
Yeah, I think that I wasn't one of those kids who, started her first company at age 6, but I think that some of my background did help me to have a slightly different worldview and approach to things. An interesting topic always is about entrepreneurs, and that they're just a little bit, they always take a bit of a different path. They got a bunch of things going, tend to see and process things in a bit of a different way. And so I think my background just kind of, possibly an innate personality thing as well, who knows, but contributed to me just always, even when I was an undergrad as an econ major, I questioned a lot of things that, well, we now know are not hard truths about economics, but at the time that's how it was presented. And, so all along, just having a little bit of a different perspective on how things work.
It's so funny. I graduated, or I had two majors, I guess, in college, one of which was financial economics. And throughout probably the first 3 years of college, and to be fair, I stayed there for 5 years. So the 3 years
Probably
was
about
like,
half of it.
yeah, exactly. 3 years is just a little bit more than half. I really liked economics, but like you said, I struggled with connecting it to the real world because you learn in fundamentals of micro and macro, and then you learn like the theory and things like that, and you're like, but that's not how decisions are made.
Right.
Right.
The rational actor and the
Right.
invisible hand. Like,
Yeah.
what?
And like, pricing strategies have to necessarily be perfect and always line up. And then you realize that things aren't always like that. And when I was introduced to behavioral economics, it blew my mind because it really tracked, I think, reality and kind of how people make decisions. And I always, my school actually didn't teach behavioral economics.
Right.
And I was
I'm
really,
too old for that. So yeah.
it was just one of those things where I think to be fair, it came about a little bit later than, and became more popularized later than kind of the traditional Keynesian economics, if you will. This is not an economics podcast, by the way, but like, it's just something that I've read a lot about, especially because I majored in it. And then I realized psychology plays a huge role that makes us very much irrational in the day-to-day space. But I will say this, when you know the econ theory of what the perfect, buyer or, economic kind of player is, and then when you also think about the psychological aspect of how they make decisions in the real world, I actually think that's super crucial for, to understand how to run a business or maybe how to market a company, et cetera. I guess I always thought to myself that like econ is not practical. It's a lot of, math and just theory, right? And you can't, what are you going to really use it in the real world for? But I think having it as a foundation is great for business. Yeah. Anyways,
it's practical. Some of it might be wrong, but it's practical.
That's right. Yeah. Sure. That was a sidebar. But so you said you did a gap year between undergraduate and law school. Were you?
Well, yeah, there was a gap, not necessarily a gap year.
Okay. Got it. Yeah.
Right. The gap year was having a baby.
Oh, nice.
So my daughter had just turned 1 when I started law school in Syracuse. Wow. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Which I think is for a side note, anyone who's thinking of going to grad school and, starting a family, grad school, I think is a great time to have children, as you have a lot more flexibility, even though it sounds crazy. People, how could you do that? But it's more difficult when you're practicing law and you have, young children or family obligations. You do have more flexibility in school. And so I would suggest that. It worked well for me.
Wow, interesting. Did you have to? I mean, that's so inspiring. I remember seeing some of my fellow classmates, very pregnant, like coming to class, and then they're gone for 2 weeks, and then they come back, to take finals, and I don't know. It's so.
You hope the baby sleeps a lot, not colicky, but.
I get it, but obviously I don't know. I personally have never given birth, but it's still just such a. I don't know. It just seems like so much. And I kind of both admire, and then also I'm like, I can't even believe that's possible. I'm curious, did you have to really kind of structure your life, minute by minute? Okay, I have class between 1 and 4, then I have to come home and do this, and then I can study in the evening when the baby's asleep, type of thing?
I think, like a lot of things, it's a combination of highly structured and high flexibility. Mm-hmm. Both are required. And also, I'm going to say, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term gunner. So my daughter is in law school in her last year, and she came across a book I had bought and then later given to her. I bought before I started law school. I was studying up, and I took all the extensive notes on each chapter, and I gave it to her when she started law school, and she came across it and she said, I can say for sure you were a gunner, but I think it was really that, I had to prepare knowing that I was not going to have the same amount of time as my classmates.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you look, was that a good experience? I mean, overall, do you think that prepared you for kind of the, working, practicing as an attorney and then eventually starting your own company? Just that sort of level of, I mean, you say flexibility, but at the same time, you definitely had a lot more on your plate probably than a lot of your fellow classmates.
Yeah, I think by my nature, being a bookworm, being a student, that developing the flexibility, which is also something that because of the pandemic, we've all had to stretch in that area, was really the part that helped me the most. And so, I can say when I went to Boston to take the bar exam, I stayed in, well, like an Airbnb now before Airbnb. And I happened to stay with this older couple, retired, and the man was dying of cancer. I didn't know this when I got there, right? And the Olympics were on TV, and I was supposed to be cramming for the bar exam, right? And instead, I just ended up, of course, having deep conversations with this man who was just, sitting there in the common room watching the Olympics and, waiting to die of cancer. And just realized this is, meaningful. And I've studied enough. I'm not going to suddenly plummet, to the bottom of my class or the bottom of all bar takers, and just let go of the stress and, feeling like it has to be this way, so.
Wow. That's such a powerful, I mean, it's almost lucky that you ran into this person. I mean, that's such
Right.
I feel like that's such a shock to one system,
It's perspective, right? It's realizing you can't control it all and life goes on, and there's the good and the bad and all aspects of that. I don't get too philosophical, but yeah. Times like that, or when your kid is sick and you stay home for the week, and I mean, several times I took B's instead of A's on, papers as they were late. And but in life, that's what happens, and it's okay.
That's such a great lesson, and just also really lucky, I guess, that you learned it and through someone else, frankly, as an experience, rather than kind of having to deal with something of your own, perhaps at that age. A lot of times these experiences shape us so profoundly.
Right.
Also, I think that's a really great lesson for business. Sometimes if you have a deliverable that's due and you think that you're not ready, sometimes you just have to you have to publish the thing or release that instance of your platform or whatever it is and move on. And if you get a B, quote unquote, because it has one or two bugs, you just have to get it.
I mean, that's the way now. Like, that's the thing, just launch it and iterate and, improve on the fly. But as lawyers, of course, that's very difficult to embrace that mentality. And it can be either extreme, not necessarily good, but to learn to just say, okay, well, this is where we are. And, not give ourselves and each other a little bit of grace in that regard. And I think in the past year we've all been practicing that.
Yeah. Just to take one small moment here and just get a couple comments. So Marianne says financial economics, who even knew there was such a thing? Yeah, so there was actually, I mean, I'm obviously not going to get into this, but we had a Bachelor of Arts in economics, and I took the Bachelor of Science, which was the regular economics degree plus like economic forecasting and things I haven't even thought about since college. So
we didn't have such separation as far as I know at Tufts, but so yeah, most of the people I went to school with, they were headed to Wall Street, and so they would have had that kind of focus.
I thought I was too, to be fair. Marianne,
life is so fun.
I know. Marianne says, what were you thinking, Faith? but in a good way, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it worked out great, like I said. I mean, and I like to think that on that time, while she was living with me, she was picking up a little bit of the towards while I was listening to the tapes and whatnot, and that helped her
of course.
in law school. But
Yeah.
just being a good mom.
Right. People are listening to Mozart tapes. You're just creating chords.
Exactly. And again, back then, I mean, my daughter's, older now. So, but back then, it really, that kind of thing wasn't a thing. But
Right.
yeah, she did have to listen to, well, back then it was, contracts or torts or whatever on tape, and you would put it in your cassette player in your car, drive around and listen to it.
Wow.
Yeah. She
That's
heard
so
a lot
cool.
of that.
Seth Feinberg, I think this is a legal question, so we might say this for a little bit later, or perhaps maybe reach out separately. But hey there, Seth. Says Roman and Faith, South Florida immigration attorney, wondering how the news ending the U.S. travel ban will immediately impact our business. So immigration lawyers in the U.S., especially for Brazil, Europe, how can we use technology to prepare for these changes? So let me table this question for a little bit later in the conversation, because I think this can be good. This can go really well with your sort of story of how Enmigri is built. But thank you, Seth, for the question. Soumya says, good afternoon, Roman. Faith, good to see you both. Hello. Hi.
Good afternoon. Yeah. And this is great to see comments and questions. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm super excited. So keep them coming, please. Okay. So Faith, you finished law school. You've had this, you have a small child in tow. You've had this incredible kind of, deep experience reminding you to also live life in the moment. All these things, of course, have shaped us and I'm sure have shaped you. You then had a career as a kind of technology focused lawyer. Can you talk a little bit about that? Sort of how did you decide to go down the road that you went down, and what was that road? And then we'll eventually make our way over to how you ended up finding the life that you do have now.
All right, great. So it's interesting. I think, we talked about as having that part of you that's an entrepreneur. Life also just kind of throws things at us is a little bit different. So my first job out of law school, I ended up in-house at a international tech company, and I didn't know it when they hired me, but my boss was going on maternity leave, and so I was actually interim general counsel, first job out of law school for an international tech company, and dealing with lawyers in Latin America and and throughout the Middle East, and our sales team throughout the U.S. And so that was great experience. But I had already been planning on starting my own firm, so I did that. And so I had my own practice for many years, which I loved. And I was representing mostly nonprofits and small businesses, startups, and a wide variety of clients, and enjoyed doing that. All kinds of things, basically being general counsel for all of those organizations. And I closed down my practice when the Great Recession in the U.S. hit. And I was fortunate because I had developed a strong network, something we had already talked about. And so I was able to get a job in-house again when so many people were unfortunately losing their jobs and their homes and whatnot. And so that's when I was focusing at that time in-house. We had in the legal department, a subgroup that was called special contracts, and within that group there were two of us that did mostly tech agreements, so a lot of software licensing that of course I had done on my own, but focusing on in the context of a large company.
And this is at Staples, by the way, right? And just curious, before we move on there, how long did you work what was the first company that you worked at, right, at law school?
Yeah, that was Cytex. Originally an Israeli company. They make high-end like printing equipment that would have been used by all the big magazines, and as well as all the print shops around, town that you would go to, all of those kinds of things.
And how long were you there for before you opened up your own practice?
I think I was there maybe 1 or 2 years.
Okay. I'm curious about just that moment, because I do want to ask about that a little bit, because I think that's an important part of your story. That's where you sort of first became a business owner, right? That's where you actually went off on your own. So just to think about it contextually, You had I guess at that point, like a 4-year-old child, I guess.
Right,
Your
right.
daughter, I guess, was
When
about
I
4 or 5.
graduated, from law school, she was 4, yeah.
Okay, so then by now she's 6, for first grade, something like that. And you went on, you had, I'm assuming, a steady paycheck. It was helping pay for, and then you went off and started your own
Yeah,
practice, which unless everyone was walking into your door right away, I mean, that's a risk. And I'm just
right.
curious, what made you decide to do that? How did you make that choice?
I think it was, first of all, realizing that that entrepreneurial part of me that wanted to have some say in the work I was doing, the direction I was going, the decisions, even, in terms of the legal decisions you're making when you're working for a large company. Even when you are the general counsel, you're not necessarily able to make the decisions that you think are, in terms of good overall strategy, legal and or business. And so, yeah, I was thankful for that opportunity, but and also who I was working for. I loved working with my small business clients in the nonprofit, and I had everything from business associations to, charitable organizations, to religious organizations, to franchisees, people who are buying into franchise systems who, it's hard for them to get lawyers, and yes, tech startup. So yeah, it was just, every day was wonderful learning about the businesses and what they do and helping them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool, and I'm happy that it worked out, and it was great. Obviously with the Great Recession, it was,
Yeah.
like you said, a
Right.
challenge for a lot of people.
And I
Um,
joke that while I was practicing on my own, I was voted as a top 10 corporate lawyer by a women's business publication in Massachusetts, and they quoted one of my clients as saying, "Yeah, Faith is great. She teaches us all the ways we don't need a lawyer anymore." I was like, so true.
that's great. That's a great business model.
I know.
So to get back to you being, you're at Staples, you're working in the special contracts team. You're obviously doing a lot of things on the tech side, and this is around, I guess, 2008, 2009, right? Sort of during
Right,
the
right.
during the Great Recession.
Starting then, yeah.
And I mean, obviously, technology. There was the dot-com bust in 2000, 2001.
Right.
Tech sort of had a little bit of a lull, although obviously overall it was still sort of creeping up. I know that during this time, as I think often happens during kind of economic downfalls, a lot of new companies are born that over the next 3 to 4 years, once the economy starts kind of building back up, you see a huge explosion of,
Right.
new big businesses. And we had a lot of tech companies, a lot of these, especially I'm thinking about like, um, I'm trying to think of the names of some of these firms, but like fintech companies that were helping people manage their finances and their wealth, right?
Right,
People
right, right.
clearly, a lot of this, with respect to the Great Recession, was people taking out loans that they shouldn't have, or,
Right.
predatory mortgages and
Yeah.
things like that.
And
Did
I
you?
had found before, when I was practicing, that whenever there was smaller recessions, I was somewhat recession proof because of that. People would, like, take a lump sum and use it to buy into a, franchise system or start their own business. And so I
Mhm.
had weathered those storms, but the Great Recession was different. And my daughter then was about to go to college. So, I had different concerns, and these are just, the realities, not being able to wait out that, dip and then come back up for, you know, tech or other business clients. No one was starting businesses then. Everyone wanted a bankruptcy lawyer.
Right. Yeah.
It was too depressing for me to do bankruptcy work.
And I'm thinking even now, I think I remember hearing last year, at the height of the COVID pandemic, there were some record LLC creation numbers, and same
Right.
thing, maybe people were laid off, and they have a little bit. And so they say, look,
Yeah.
let me just take this opportunity to start my own business.
Right.
Um, that's super cool. So what were you
Which is what I
seeing?
did.
Right,
Actually.
exactly. Were you seeing any trends or anything as you were working in this sort of special, contracts team? Were you seeing any technology trends or anything happening in the space as we were getting into 2010, 11, 12?
So a lot of what I did there was on the buy side, right? So when the company would need software for their own internal use, we would negotiate. So unlike us normal folk, the big companies, of course, negotiate all those licenses. And so I did a lot of that. But also, it sounds crazy to say, but back then Staples had not had their own mobile app. And so I worked on the team to when they were developing the first mobile app. And no one, lawyers didn't really know, how do you interpret these Apple terms and conditions, and wrap them into your own terms and conditions and synchronize them with your existing company-wide privacy policies, all of those things. So there was, even though a lot of the work I was doing was, pretty rote, there was this aspect of it that was interesting and novel.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Do you ever think at that point, I'm just curious, like, wow, I'm learning something quite new. I could probably go back out on my own and leverage this and work with all sorts of big companies and help be there, kind of be an outside counsel or something.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I did a lot of speaking and training at that time. I started, I trained it not only internally to the other lawyers in the department where I was working, but also bar associations and in other groups, because we were learning, and people had a need to understand the key issues that come up with that.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely.
So, wow, that's cool. How did you then go from that to effectively, this life of kind of living, or traveling across Latin America and, eventually kind of coming across this idea of building a technology solution of your own to help, legal practitioners in immigration and perhaps, beyond that.
Yeah.
What was that sort of
So
transition?
life happens,
Yeah.
and my whole life, and this is, and my other family members have migraine, um, and I had managed it, but around during the time when I was at Staples, I developed what's known as chronic migraine. And how that presented for me is one day I got a migraine that didn't go away for years. And so I couldn't work. Obviously, I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with migraines, but you're extremely sensitive to light and sound. Usually you just retreat to a dark room and, go to bed. And it's not just a headache, it's like a full body response. Yeah, so I was quite sick and, tried to manage it and keep working. But eventually I had to take medical leave. And then when that ran out, I lost my job. And
Wow.
my daughter was, in college at that time. And yeah, so it's the kind of challenges that happen and are really pretty common, and people often don't talk about when these things happen. And so, yeah, I was fortunate that, I had good benefits, and, I had some insurance that helped, and good health insurance. But yeah, it was a difficult time. So I stopped working, and after, I was fortunate to be able to go to some of the best neurologists and other professionals. And I thought I was just going to be like that for the rest of my life. And so I kind of retired early, so to speak, and moved to Florida, literally bought a little house in a little beach town in Florida, and thought, all right, I'm just going to be sick for the rest of my life.
Wow.
I thought that's what was going to happen. Fortunately, that was not the case, but yeah, that was a huge turning point.
Was the thought kind of like, look, at least let me be in a place where I could be comfortable and be around, warm weather and sort of take care of myself?
Yeah, because I could not go into a restaurant, for example, because of the sound and the light.
Hmm.
And so, and living up in the Northeast, the weather is not conducive to going out much. And so I thought, at least I can be outside, not,
Wow.
not have to be inside. And yeah, so that was kind of my thinking. And
And so,
people respond differently. Different weather patterns can impact people differently, but that actually was a little better for me.
how did you, with whatever you're kind of open to sharing, did you eventually kind of were you able to sort of start dealing with it, or did it kind of go away eventually? I mean, because we're clearly speaking now, and
Right.
you're
Yeah.
sitting in
So
front of it.
sometimes that, can kind of resolve on its own, but I think more often than not, it doesn't. And I had gone to a neurologist when I moved to Florida, and I said, basically I was seen on the best of the best, the guy in Boston who wrote the book, blah, 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 going to, and I said, I just have stopped taking all medication, stopped all treatment, and just basically given up. And he's like, yeah, I don't think you should do that. Let's keep trying things. And so that helped a bit. We tried new medications that helped for a while. And so I was like, okay, and, can see maybe, I'll be able to kind of get back to being productive. And I started doing some consulting and side work to I wanted to be productive. I had and unfortunately when the medication started to fail again, I kind of panicked. I was like, not again, I can't go back to being bedridden. And yeah, so this is not a response that many people would have, but what I did is I loaded up a backpack with, hiking gear and a lot of medication. I umped my meds without telling my doctor so that I could function. And I went backpacking for 6 months because I
Wow.
thought, if this is going to fail, I'm going to do this, before I go back to bed. And so I started at the Canadian border, down the International Appalachian Trail, down to the Appalachian Trail, and then skipped down to do parts of the Florida Trail, thinking, well, this is going to be it. I'm going to be back in bed and I should do this while I can.
Wow. And then so what happened?
So, I did, I just finally realized I was going to have to stop taking medication and figure things out. And so I don't want to spend too much time on this, but, really it became a personal journey for me of dealing with pain, someone who's at that point chronic pain sufferer, and did a lot of research onto pain and the psychology of pain and the physical aspects of pain, and that was kind of the first step of a journey for me in terms of healing, so that I could become productive and not sick all the time. And so it was a huge change for me. Later, something unrelated, I had a major surgery and I refused to take any medication, and they're like, you have to take pain meds, and I was like, no, the pain is not going to kill me. I've been here before, I can do this. So
Wow.
it was a huge turning point again for me.
Yeah. Wow. That's so, I mean, I feel like there's so much to pull from that, just
I
from,
know.
from your perspective
Is
as
that a separate podcast?
yeah, it's a separate episode. No, but I appreciate you sharing that, because it is part of your journey, right? Like this idea of going down and, doing this major hike. I mean, that's a major physical kind of, journey that you took on, physical, right? Like you literally hiked and, through the mountains. And were you hiking by yourself, by the way, or were you
Yeah.
with groups?
Yeah. I carried a lot of medication.
Right.
I did. I have to admit. But, yeah.
And were you camping? I mean, I'm just curious. Were you staying at kind
Yeah.
of?
So, I would carry a tent and sleeping bag and all of that. So you're
Wow.
kind of carry whatever you need. You're
Mhm.
self-sufficient out there. And then about every week or 10 days, you stop in a town and resupply with food and do your laundry and
Mhm.
shower, those
Wow.
kinds of things. So yeah, there's a whole story to that. And my maternal grandmother, actually, when she was older in age, after retiring, she hiked the Appalachian Trail. And so, yes, and she got me and my cousin into some camping when we were young.
That's really cool. Wow. You see, and that kind of comes full circle, and it was something that was almost therapeutic for you as well.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people out there hiking are looking to, work through whatever it is going on with them. And maybe it was a lifelong dream, maybe is, something the person who started the trail basically said he was going to walk off the war, which we now know is PTSD, right? And so,
Yeah. Wow. And so eventually you kind of, you made it back, and you had some of these other kind of life, like you said, situations, and you had major surgery, and you're kind of, you now have this relationship with pain, but it also is a relationship with sort of your own, I mean, this is the way I'm taking it, hearing the story. It's also a relationship with sort of your own willpower, right? And like your
right.
own ability to control the way that you think about a certain situation, to be present and to have meaning, you know what I mean? And like thinking, like to your
Yeah.
point about wanting to be productive, I mean, that's a really powerful motivator. I can
Right.
imagine you've gone through, you started this journey thinking, we started this conversation with you saying, look, I was so lucky to have these educational opportunities, and you went through these, to school, and you had these great jobs, and all of a sudden you find yourself, quote unquote, unproductive in that way. And I can imagine how that could be this kind of thing of like, I have to get back. I want to get back to that.
Right.
And, not to kind of really distill it too much, but I mean, I don't want to force an analogy, but realistically, when you're running a business, and I'm curious, I want to get to sort of how you got started with Enmigri, but I could just say from my perspective, there were definitely times starting up Laborless or where I was like, this is, why am I doing this? Nothing's working. Right. Like I might as well give up. Right. And it's definitely different. I'm not comparing the sort of what is happening to you, but the mindset I think is similar of like, all right, let me get back to sort of why I'm doing this in the first place.
Right.
And,
And we've all had failures, right? If you want to use that word, a terrible word, but right, you have you can't even get to those failures if you don't take the leap. And so then you start having that wrestling match with yourself, right? Of thinking, oh, why did I do this? Why didn't I keep that job? Or, what are people going to think? Like I did this podcast, I did all these things, and so this goes back to also what I was saying about we just need to be a little easier on ourselves and each other. And as entrepreneurs, especially, we have our a lot of ideas for a lot of different things. And some of them are going to take off. Some of them are going to go in unexpected directions. And that's accepting that. And I'm just going to skip ahead and say it's one of the things I love about Latin America. Is, I've met so many people who are just a little have more grace and toughness at the same time than a lot of us in North America do.
Yeah. Wow, let's get into that. Before we do, I just want to say just a couple of more comments here. We do have Saeed said, hi, Roman and Faith, said you're having audio difficulties. I hope for other folks, if you can let me know in the comments if you hear us okay. Syed, sorry if you're having, I can hear everything fine, but hopefully that's been resolved, or hopefully the recording will be good for you. So, but apologies for that.
Can you clean it up in post-production?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll figure that out. So Marianne says,
thanks, Marianne. That's great to hear.
Amazing. So thank you. Diana Gonzalez, thank you for watching. It says, what an interesting
hi, Diana. Thanks.
life story, saying connecting with nature is a powerful medicine.
Totally. And that's another thing that, right now I'm in Ecuador, and people understand that, I'm in the Andes Mountains right now. The connection, actually, complete side note, I believe Ecuador is one of the few countries that has part of its constitution that nature has rights under the Constitution. I mean, it's a highly Catholic country, but Christmas trees, cutting down trees for Christmas, not allowed, even on your own property. It's just very different. And so there's a whole other thing about, spending extensive time in another country will really shift your worldview and your understanding of yourself, your perspectives that are not necessarily true in the big, capital T sense.
Yeah, like what we think is true is just what we know.
Exactly.
And Diana and Marianne said they can hear us. So thank you both for confirming. So, okay, cool. So I want to jump into your kind of your international travels and how that got started, and sort of this relationship you've developed with the kind of immigration space, particularly through your travel. So how did you decide, or where did you go first? How did you decide to go to Latin America? And then sort of through that journey, how did you kind of come across maybe some inefficiencies, if you will, with the immigration process?
So it's interesting because actually this sounds a little strange to a lot of people, but since fourth grade, I always wanted to come to South America. And we studied a little bit of it, in our very cursory manner in fourth grade about South America, the history, culture. And I knew that I wanted to come travel around South America, but for whatever reason, life was happening. I didn't have a chance. And so, so when I was in Florida And I, at that point, had a little bit of equity in my house, and I decided and I had started to feel better. I was like, I'm gonna take this opportunity to sell my house. The My daughter was gone, working now, graduated college, the family dog had died, it was like time to do this. And so yeah, at the end of 2019, I came to South America thinking, well, I'll travel around a little bit, maybe find a good spot to kind of have like a, base camp kind of thing. And then I can travel around to different countries. And so I was in Ecuador. I had traveled around the coast of Ecuador. Then I came to Cuenca, and I was like, oh, this is lovely. And, I can, get a place here and, do spur travel trips from here. And before I could get my visa situated and everything, COVID hit. Yeah. So I was like, okay, we won't be traveling around South America. The borders were closed. I could have left, but I stayed here. And one of the first things I did was started volunteering, because obviously there's a lot of poverty here. And I had made friends already. And so with a group of professors and doctors and foreigners and Ecuadorians, and all of us got together to raise some money and buy and deliver food to people who were stuck at home and didn't have any food. So
Wow.
that was great.
And when you moved down to Ecuador, did you want to buy a place?
No, I was just thinking I wanted to travel around South America.
Okay.
I wasn't thinking that I would necessarily stay here.
And so you were saying, as your immigration situation got settled, COVID hit. So what was that situation? Were you applying for some sort of were you just a tourist, or were you trying to get a
Yeah,
work
so you
visa?
can come in as a tourist, but if you want to stay longer, then you would need some kind of a temporary visa,
Got it.
or permanent visa. And so, yeah, so that hadn't been processed yet when COVID hit, and then they stopped processing them. And then, of course, we had very strict early lockdowns here, and the land borders were closed. And yeah, so, just like everyone, I mean, there was a lot of hardship, again, with people losing their jobs and all kinds of things happening all over the world. So yeah, so I decided to just stay, again, be flexible and make the best of the situation. And so in terms of the business, I had started to learn a little bit about this phenomenon of developing software, and specifically mobile apps, using no code and low code platforms. And I had become interested in that and did some learning in that area. And so I was thinking, well, I'm going to be here. I should start some kind of business that I can do from wherever I end up traveling, when I do, or while I'm here, do it here. And so I thought, I had now experience with traveling in Latin America, experience with the immigration system. My lawyer was great, by the way. No knock on her. And also my Spanish, I speak a little bit of Spanish, but it's not good enough to conduct business in. And so most of the immigration lawyers speak at least some English. So these were all considerations. And I had noticed that some of the tech that we're just accustomed to in the United States or Europe just didn't really exist here, except for maybe some of the large, international corporations.
Mm-hmm.
And so I saw that there was a need for that, for immigration lawyers to automate and use some tools to communicate with their clients. Again, of course, everyone was staying home, so you weren't having people come to your office. So to share documents, to share messages, for the lawyers to keep track of their calendaring, all of those things. And so I ended up actually developing a client portal that is it's flexible, uses different no-code and low-code tools, that is for immigration lawyers in Latin America. And it's a subscription model, so you pay monthly to use it.
Did you partner up with your immigration? Did you go to the immigration attorney that you worked with and say, look, what can I do to make your practice better? Or how did you how did you know what features they needed, or things like that?
No, well, not specifically the lawyer that I hired, but other lawyers, just connecting. Again, the theme of building a network wherever
Hmm.
you are and whatever you're doing, and finding out what people are doing, what they're looking for, what they're using, how that's meeting their needs or not. And so the practice management software is interesting because you have, like in a lot of software, you have the very high-end solutions, which don't work for most people. Then you have these kind of off-the-shelf solutions that are not very flexible, right? So they might be affordable, but if your needs vary a little bit, whether it's because you're in a different country or because your practice a little different, or whatever the case might be, trying to customize that either is not an option or becomes expensive. Maybe you have to hire someone or something, right? And so the tools with the no code and low code platforms allow me to develop something that is both affordable and flexible.
Hmm.
And so that really was the key that I saw that could be the most beneficial. And also, lawyers are understand they have a need to be careful about security and privacy, but don't always aren't necessarily the most tech savvy, right? So
Hmm.
like, you have to be concerned about security, but you don't know how to evaluate tech in that light. So some lawyers just shun tech because of that. They don't know even what to ask.
Hmm.
And so with this solution, you can um, ensure that you are protecting what is sensitive information, and be transparent about that. And then at the same time, there's a huge amount of tech, kind of an explosion and money coming into Latin America. So it was good timing for that.
So
So that
how
was a
does
lot to throw at you, but there was all this kind of coming together, right? Which is what happens as entrepreneurs. We see this many things just coming together and like, yeah, this is it.
no,
Let's make
definitely 100%, and it's great that you were able to sort of see that, right, and then make a decision to kind of
it right,
capitalize on it, if
right.
you will.
So I started by just messaging lawyers and saying, hey, you know, would this meet your needs? What do you think about this? What would you pay? And everyone was like, yeah, this is great. So
Wow. And so can we talk a little bit about what the platform does? Like, what can an immigration lawyer get out of it? What can they expect if they use it? How does it work?
sure. So, in terms of some of the details, for example, on a basic level, let's say you start out, you have a prospective client. Kind of the old school way is like they maybe send you an email or they call you up, set up an appointment, they go to your office, and then you have them sign all these documents, and you have the hard copies and, et cetera. So, none of that is working because of COVID, because of, also because people in North America and Europe expect a tech solution. Um, and so, so one of the things you might want to do as an immigration lawyer in Latin America is you have like a way for people to contact you when they are a prospective client, automatically calendar the appointment. When it's time for that appointment, then you can automatically create, a profile for them where you're gathering the information, create a new matter. So let's say they need a temporary visa, and so this is all becomes integrated into the system. Whereas before, you probably are using Gmail here, Zoom here, these different, right.
Does the platform come in Like, is it available in Spanish? Meaning, can the lawyers and the um, potential clients,
So
read it?
I don't want to get too technical, but the way the platform works is that it's basically works just like a website that can also function not only on your desktop, but your tablet, or like a mobile app on your devices. And so just like on the websites where you can, your default language is Spanish or English or whatever,
Mm.
it works like that.
Oh, wow.
And so, right. So that's a great benefit for immigration lawyers, right? Because they also have the language thing. It helps me that they speak English, but when they're dealing with their own clients, and
Right.
you're dealing with maybe multiple languages in a situation, yeah, everyone could just view it as they view a website.
And so you made an interesting point there. about, let's just say North America and let's just say Europe, right? There's an expectation of some level of technology, but it sounds like the assumption there is that perhaps in Latin America, there's less of an expectation of technology. Um,
Yeah.
would you say that that's right? And I guess my question was, if that's the case, then do lawyers find it challenging to then try to
Right.
get people in through tech if those
Right.
people are used to just walking down the street or calling your office?
Well, two things. One, it's changing. As I said, there's a huge tech revolution and a lot of money in that area pouring into Latin America. And I've shared some information about that. Some interesting information on LinkedIn, if anyone wants to check out my profile there. But so that is changing. But of course, immigration lawyers in Latin America are not dealing with customers in Latin
True.
America. They're dealing with, people who are either retiring from, Europe or the United States, or coming for jobs from,
Right.
other countries. And but that would be like dealing with companies mostly, right? So there is, yeah, but so things are changing, but you will still see in Latin America, for example, long lines at the bank, because a bank is where you go for a lot of transactions that some people can do online, but a lot of people just
Right.
don't have the ability to have an online bank transaction happen for them. So there's, like in a lot of the world, there's a split with who has access to that now.
Yeah, no, and that makes perfect sense. You're right. Of course, if you're an immigration attorney in Ecuador, you're working with people from outside of Ecuador, and if they're coming in,
Right.
let's say there's going to be some population there that
Right.
does have an expectation of technology, and they'll be probably a competitive advantage if you're an attorney using a platform,
Yes.
right?
Yes, it's a big marketing benefit for them to say we're cutting edge, right? And so some of our clients are, most of their clients are individuals, like I said, who might be retiring or something. But other of our clients work with companies who are bringing in workers,
Mhm.
and so whether they themselves are a small, medium, or large firm, they want to be seen as cutting edge and want to meet those expectations and say, yeah, we can do this. And so your employees can log on. Like, we expect, like with our bank, or when we buy a home in the United States, that we can log in and see what's the status of what's going on with our house closing and all the documents and what they need from us. Right. And so that is seen as kind of expected for us, but it's at this point an advantage for a law firm to have that in Latin America.
And on that exact point, Diana Gonzalez says when you do something with the end client in mind, which in this case would be the client or the prospective client of
Our
the
clients'
immigration
clients,
attorney,
right?
yeah, when you do that, it pays off both ways. It's a win-win. So I totally,
Exactly.
um,
Thanks, Diana. That's so
I
true. Right.
totally
And
agree with
so
you.
like in our case for Enmigri, right, we have clients and they may have clients who are businesses, and they have clients who are, the people who are looking for visas. So there could be many stakeholders, and having this system that makes it easier for everyone to communicate and understand the process is improves overall efficiency.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it also doubles your prospective market, because let's say there's a big company that operates in Latin America, and even if they're not an immigration law firm, they might deal with internal
Right.
immigration
Yeah.
processes, and they might come to you and say, "Look, we're not a firm, but we need this tool internally."
Yeah,
And now, if
definitely.
you're able to support both of them,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah, and a lot of companies do that in house, and so that was part of my research, finding out what people are doing, and they're using what's available and piecing it together. And so, really, one of the big value propositions that Enmigri brings is to pull all of that together in a comprehensive way and offer a solution. You know what the price is going to be each month. You have someone when you want to, add a feature. You're not having to spend all this time
Mhm.
on the tech side trying to hobble together how Zoom is going to fit together with your calendaring system and your email and all of that.
So what are you seeing for the future? I know you said there's resources coming in. There's a sort of revolution happening within Latin America around technology, and which of course would include immigration technology, but everything, right? So I mean, what are some of the things that you're seeing, I guess, on the ground, or with some of the folks you're talking to, in terms of maybe trends of within the immigration space and beyond for technology?
Yeah, so Well, one of the things, just as an individual spending time in another country in Latin America, is that you see the laws change very frequently. And so there's the lawyers themselves can leverage this technology to really show what their own value proposition, because just as everyone understands, okay, now we get what the requirements are to get a visa in, Mexico, it all changes. And so having technology that easily allows you to change the calendaring, like, okay, after 16 months you need to do this, and that your client is automatically notified, and you send them the form, and then maybe automatically populate an online form and all of this. You can really see that that's a great advantage, because getting a clear answer about what the requirements are and being sure that they're going to stay the same is just not always possible here. I mean, it's true anywhere, but maybe a little more in Latin America. And so, right, so having something that can be set up, but then again, this is where the flexibility comes in, right? They say, yeah, this is not 16 months anymore, now it's 21 months.
Mm-hmm.
You can easily change that and automatically notify the lawyer, notify their client, collect the documents you need.
Question here from Diana regarding the company. So Diana says, are you self-employed, or do you have a team that you work with? And if you do have a team, are there challenges with respect to hiring bilingual folks in South America who I guess could maybe work with you in English mostly, and work with clients or prospective clients in Spanish?
Yeah, that's a great question, Diana. Thanks. So our company, Enmigri LLC, is based in the United States, in Miami, Florida. I am the founder of the company and started it on my own. And have used up to this point contractors as needed. I do, like I had said, I do most of the interfacing with our own prospective clients myself, and thankfully they usually speak enough English and I speak enough Spanish that we muddle through. But my plan going forward is to hire bilingual employees that will do really the three key components would be the tech development, the support, and the sales. But just like anyone who's an entrepreneur understands, you go through different phases where you're ready for that. So as Roman and I were talking before, first you really have to get the tech kind of in a good enough place that it's doing what you've promised it to do. And then recently we've been working on an onboarding process to make that smoother. So when someone joins us, that getting their app up and going is quick for them. And so long term, yes, definitely I see is important to have bilingual employees that can do those key functions. I mean, it's really impressive to me, because in the United States, most people are not multilingual, and so many people in Latin America are. So if anything, it's easier for me.
That's funny. That's interesting. Yeah, whenever I travel, especially when I speak to folks in English, that's usually their second, third, fourth, fifth language.
Exactly.
And I mean, I'm lucky. I speak Russian at home, and I speak enough Spanish where I'm okay. But that's by design. If I was born here and I didn't have an immigrant family, probably just like a lot of other people, I'd speak English and a little bit of something else, but that's about it.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I was actually fluent in Spanish when I was about 18. I did a semester abroad in the Dominican Republic, but I didn't use it, and I kind of lost it, and I thought, oh well, I'll be able to get it right back. And I don't know, maybe because of age or something, but I definitely get by, but it's not, I wouldn't consider myself like business level fluent, for sure.
Interesting. Okay, that's good to know. So then I could prepare myself, because I'm always I continue to get my Spanish a little bit better, but I've never I've never studied abroad in any Spanish speaking country, or so you're kind of giving me the little push there to kind of just not drop everything, but maybe spend some time in
It's another great thing about Latin America. If you show that you're making an effort, people appreciate it. You don't just expect them to know English. And yeah, so I always say, I'm sorry, I'm working on my Spanish, and then I muddle through and I'll always graciously say, your Spanish is wonderful.
Right.
It's really,
Yeah.
really very nice.
People are very kind when they do see that
Yeah.
you're trying.
Right.
That's so cool. So so it sounds like you're, what I wanted to ask, or what my question at this point would be, kind of what do you see it for the future of Enmigri? It sounds like some of the things you are thinking about are growth. So thinking about growing out the brand, growing out, some business development within Latin America, obviously trying to onboard some more immigration attorneys. But I know that you've also, you're working with immigration attorneys, but you don't have to, right? There are broader opportunities. So what do you see? Like, what's your vision? And I know this can change. We're not going to hold you to this in 5, years. But what's your sort of maybe vision for what this can be in the next short term and then maybe midterm? Like, what are you trying to work towards?
So it's interesting because our clients are driving expansion in ways that you can't necessarily foresee. But clients will say, for example, if we can add a kind of a complementary part of this app to handle our real estate transactions that we do, right? Which is really, I mean, from the tech point of view, a client portal is a client portal. What you really need to do is understand how the user's using it and then incorporate that in. And when they go in the app and they say, okay, this matter is a immigration matter, or this matter is a real estate matter, they can expand in that way and you can build that out. And therefore, even someone who's not an immigration lawyer, who's another kind of lawyer, could also use an Enmigri app that would be customized for them. And even someone who's not a lawyer, who's say just, sells real estate or, so again, we're used to all of these things in the United States. When our doctors have client portals that we sign into, our banks have client portals. When we buy and sell a house, our title company has one. So this is, there's a huge different variety of ways we can expand, and we're going with the client needs. When someone says we want to go in this direction, that's what we can easily do, which is one of the great things about the tools we use.
Do you want to stay in the kind of Latin American market?
Well, there are a lot of things that I like about focusing on Latin America, and so that's our plan for right now. My plan, our plan. Yeah.
That's cool. That's really exciting, and I'm kind of really impressed and also a little bit surprised that this is the first conversation I'm having with somebody about focus on Latin American immigration attorneys and of course beyond, but even specifically, I mean, it's obviously a lot of people. It's a huge continent, and
I mean, Latin America is. I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but often overlooked, and it's just an amazing entrepreneurial culture. I mean, I'm generalizing. Latin America is a bunch of different countries, but overall, just a wonderful place to do business and explore fresh ideas. So yeah, it's a very exciting place to be in the entrepreneurial space.
That's so cool. I usually like to end these conversations with maybe something fun, or if I can. I think we've had a lot of kind of very deep thoughts here. I'm curious, from your time trekking the Appalachian Trail, do you have any kind of memorable? I mean, I'm sure it was crazy. I mean, you're going, especially by yourself, and you're restocking. You're going to do laundry in a town. Any memories that kind of stick out to you that that were fun or exciting, or maybe horrific, scary? You came across a bear.
Yeah, so I guess a couple of my takeaways would be this. So I started hiking by myself, hiking southbound, which is most people hike northbound for a variety of reasons, and thinking this is going to be all about me going and being by myself in the woods. But it was not. It's all about the people that you meet along the way. And that was a big surprise for me and the greatest reward for me. Because you really you need support to do something like that, and people are very interested when you're doing a fun journey like that. And so I met amazing amazing people. And the other thing I think is a takeaway we mentioned before, a lot of people go to do a long distance hike or, travel the world or whatever, because they're kind of thinking, well, I'm going to do this thing and it's going to kind of heal me or make a change, and then I'll go on to the next thing. But really my kind of motto is the trail never ends. So it's, a mistake to think that, the end of the trail is the end of that journey.
Mhm. Yeah, and the flip side of it is that we can continue to work on ourselves and whatever that might be, even when we're back at home.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, that's cool. But nevertheless, you still got to spend time in the great outdoors and see the
Yeah.
beautiful mountains.
It
So
was amazing and
yeah,
really was life changing. Definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's so cool. Well, Faith, thank you so much. I'm sure we could have another hour-long conversation about so many other
So
topics.
much
So
to cover.
yeah, so maybe we'll have you back on the show, and down the road when things have moved forward, we'll catch up on Enmigri and also talk about some of these other other facets of just life that are really important to discuss.
Yeah, that would be great. And
But
thanks so much for having me. This was wonderful. And I've watched some of your other shows and they've been really interesting. And I had mentioned to you, I've been connecting with some of the people in your network, which is really interesting because the immigration tech space is, pretty narrow niche. And so it's nice to be connected in that.
It's niche, but it's growing, and it's clearly the sort of, tentacles. That's probably not the most not the nicest word to use, but it's really kind of growing beyond, let's just say, North America,
Right. Yeah,
which is
definitely.
really, really exciting for me personally,
Mm-hmm.
and of course for everyone else in the industry. So yeah, and thank you. I appreciate that. I'm just so happy to have folks connect with one another. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story. Really, it was really inspiring. I know for me and people listening, and a lot of takeaways. So I appreciate you being here, and enjoy. Go back to the Andes. Go back to hanging out in the Andes. It sounds beautiful.
Thank you.
Thanks. Wow, what an episode, or what a conversation. So many takeaways, and I'm really excited to kind of think through this. And I encourage you all to reach out to Faith and on LinkedIn, or check out their website. Check out Enmigri. Yeah, I don't really know what to say, but the trail never ends. So I think it's a really great place to. I think it's a really great place to end on. I do want to say, Diana said, I'm from Colombia and moved to Canada 20 years ago, and I've never been to Ecuador, but would love to travel across South America. Me too. So I hope to maybe we can all do like a group South American trip and talk to immigration folks along the way. Marianne says the trail does never end. Great words of wisdom. I agree. So thank you all for being here and for the conversations. Marianne, thank you. I appreciate you as always. Thank you, of course, to Faith, and to you all for being here. Off for the next 2 weeks. I'll be at a conference in Chicago next Friday, and I'm going to a wedding because wedding season is back now. The following Friday. So our next show will be in 3 Fridays in November. We've got a lot of really cool guests already lined up for the balance of the year. So I'm excited for just, I started the show thinking there aren't that many people. Let's see what happens. A year and a half later, there's just the doors continue to open more and more wide. So thank you all. As always, stay safe. Peace out and have a great weekend.